Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Healthy Pod. It's your friend Nick, and today we're diving into the science and soul of female friendships, how they shape our health, our happiness, and even our sense of self. So, did you know that your friendships could literally save your life? One study from Harvard actually showed that people with strong social ties increased their chance of living longer by up to 50%. And women with close friends are less likely to suffer from depression, heart disease, and even dementia. So today we're diving into the power of female friendships, why they matter so much for your health, what to do if you're the fringe friend, and how to let go of toxic adult relationships, and how to focus on the people that truly lift you up. So what I wanted to start with was a little bit of the data. According to the Mayo Clinic, adults with strong social networks have lower rates of high blood pressure, obesity, and depression. One meta-analysis of 148 studies published in the PLOS Medicine magazine found that people with strong social connections had a 50% higher chance of survival over a given period of time compared to those with weak connections. That's actually a bigger predictor than exercise or quitting smoking. So that's pretty impactful and pretty huge. So for women specifically, I actually love this term. UCLA researchers coined a term that is tend and befriend. And unlike the classic fight or flight, for women under stress, they often release oxytocin, which drives us to bond, nurture, and connect. So when you grab a coffee with a girlfriend or even text her a quick thinking of you message, your body is literally lowering cortisol and protecting your long-term health. Like, that is pretty amazing. And I think we can all recognize that when we have a girls' night, we're so excited to kind of just get together, talk with the girls. It literally is, because when we leave, don't we leave feeling amazing, excited, connected, and less stressed overall? I mean, I know when I go out with my friends, or when I have a spa day with a girlfriend, or even when a friend pops by for 5 minutes just to chat, I mean, I feel like a different person after. It's really quite phenomenal. And I think over time, I really sacrificed connecting with girlfriends because, you know, kids, life, work, husband, all the things. But something that I've started recognizing is those dates with my girlfriends, or time that I spent with my girlfriends, it actually nourishes me and it fills my cup. So something that I've committed to, that I encourage everyone to kind of think about, is how do we make more time for creating those uplifting connections that really, truly fill your cup and fill your soul. So it's interesting. I heard this term, fringe friend, and I kind of felt connected to it in a way, because I feel like sometimes I have been the fringe friend. I am someone who, as many of you know, I'm an only child, and my friends, like, I wanted them to be like my sisters. I grew up watching so many of my best friends who had sisters have the best time with their sisters, and now even in adulthood being best friends with their sisters. So now let's talk about this fringe friend concept. So here's how I define it. A fringe friend is someone who's on the edge of your circle. So you see them often enough, maybe in a mom group or a workout class or a mutual gathering, but the relationship doesn't feel safe or supportive or reciprocal. And you might feel like you're auditioning for their approval, or that you're tolerated but not celebrated, really. And so it's interesting that I feel this way, because in certain groups, you know, I'm the new kid on the block because I just moved here a few years ago, and, you know, people have been so incredibly welcoming, but at the same time, I'm trying to create friends in groups that have been friends for decades, and I'm just kind of coming in new. And so sometimes I do feel like I'm seeking approval, or, I don't necessarily share my perspective. And it could be something really small, like, hey, where do you want to go out for dinner? And I'm just like, anywhere you want, anything you want to do, anywhere you want to go, anything you want to order, because I just don't want to complicate things. But I think also that prevents people from getting to know really me. So that's something that I'm definitely working on. But it's kind of hard to feel that way, because you want to be, part of this group, part of this relationship. You're quote unquote auditioning for approval, and you want to be celebrated, not just tolerated. So there's a few things that you can do, but first is really understanding, are you the fringe friend on the side? So, signs you might be is, you're invited last to something, or only when someone else cannot make it. Another one is your texts often go unanswered. So if you're kind of like on and you're texting, like they'll text you and you text back right away, but when you text them, it takes like a day for them to reply, or like they'll reply in 3 days and say, oops, sorry, I didn't see this. Like that might mean you're on the fringe friend axis, because if you truly were a priority, they would act like it. And so for me, I really try my hardest to answer as quickly as possible, because maybe I want to be accepted, but I also feel like that's me showing that I care. And yeah, I will sometimes just text someone out of the blue and say, I'm thinking about you, because I truly am. So that's one of the signs. Conversations lean toward them, not mutual sharing. So if someone is constantly talking about themselves, but they are not asking you anything or asking for a contribution, that might mean that you're kind of a fringe friend and they don't really care. And something that I want you to particularly pay attention to is, do you feel anxious before seeing them or depleted afterwards? So it is so important to lean into what your subconscious is telling you and what your body is telling you. I talk about this all the time when it comes to health and wellness and hunger, but try and listen to your body. And if you're feeling anxiousness, or if you're feeling depleted after an interaction, that's telling you something. So don't just push it down. Accept the feeling and try and work through it and understand what you need to do to not feel anxious anymore. And maybe that's not seeing them, and what you need to do not to feel depleted afterwards. So for example, if, a conversation only leans towards them and you're not mutually sharing, perhaps there's an opportunity to say, hey, here's my perspective on this, or I actually wanted to share this with you, so that you can have that sharing moment where you're letting your emotions through. So I really feel like it's really important for you to realize if you're the fringe friend and think about solutions. So one is really clarifying connections. So ask yourself, honestly, is this someone worth pursuing deeper? Or is it okay for this relationship to stay casual? So I'm someone who, whenever I, click or meet someone that I'm like, oh my God, this could be my best friend, this is awesome. You have to ask yourself, is it someone worth pursuing in a deeper way? And I've been really honest with myself about that. There are some people where it's totally fine to stay casual, be an acquaintance. You could be, just someone you see in a big group and you have a great time and you might have a great conversation, but that's it. Or is this someone you want to really pursue a deeper connection with? So clarify that connection. Secondly, it's about shifting your energy. If you don't feel that the relationship is reciprocated, just give less shits about it, really. Instead of pushing for their attention, redirect your efforts to friends who reciprocate. So I know that even in my younger years in high school, like I was always pursuing a relationship, wanting to have this particular girl be a closer friend of mine. And I was just pushing and it wasn't working. And so I really had to rethink my relationships with my friends. And if friends didn't reciprocate, then it wasn't something that I would continue to push because it was an uphill battle. So my advice is really shift your energy. If you're not getting anything in return, then really shift your energy to where you are getting stuff in return. The other option is to expand your circle. So for me, I've tried really hard as I moved to Florida to join different communities. And I feel lucky because the natural community that I joined, which was my kids' school, was so welcoming. And I found some beautiful, amazing, incredible friends who do reciprocate and who really do reach out and care and want to get to know me. And for me, that is everything, particularly because I left my family back in Canada, some of my best friends back in Canada, and I was starting fresh and starting new, and expanding that circle with community. It just naturally clicked for me at my kids' school. But you know, whether it's book clubs or fitness groups or volunteering or even online spaces, friendships can bloom later in life. And I feel like sometimes being the newbie is okay, and trying to create connections where there are common interests is a great idea. So if a circle that you're in is not giving you what you need and not uplifting you, expand your circle to somewhere or someone that does. And then honestly, release the pressure. So I feel like growing up, you kind of want to be accepted by everyone. You want to be accepted by certain groups. You want to be friends with everyone. And, you know, you ask the questions like, can I play with you today at recess? And sometimes there's just so much pressure to be friends with everyone, but you got to release the pressure. So not everyone is meant to be your person. And sometimes we mistake proximity for closeness, and that's okay. So you know, there are sometimes moments where it's like, oh my gosh, everyone lives right down the street from me. And that's proximity. And there's a reason that, you know, the kids are friends, that's proximity. But that doesn't mean that you need to be close with them. And if you're not feeling it, then release the pressure of needing to be BFFs with someone who's just close in proximity, but not necessarily close to your heart. So for me, that's a really, really important message when it comes to fringe friendships. If you are putting pressure on yourself, if you're feeling that anxiety, if you're feeling depletion after an interaction, well, maybe that person isn't really for you. So that's something that I would love for people to kind of think about and evaluate when it comes to female friendships, because these female friendships that give you health and life and uplift are not the ones that you know, you feel depleted afterwards. And it's really, really important to evaluate those relationships. I always say, you know, firstly, I feel really lucky to have maybe true friends. I maybe have 5, and I feel so lucky to have those true relationships and friendships, but you don't need 100. You don't need to be best friends with everybody. It's just that close circle that is really, really important. And sometimes it's just clarifying that with yourself and negotiating yourself out of things that make you feel uncomfortable. You don't have to accept every invitation, particularly if it's an invitation that's last minute or you were last invited or you don't feel super welcome, but make those choices yourself. Before we kind of get into toxic adult friendships, I want to take a moment and take a quick break from our sponsors. Okay, let's talk toxic adult friendships. So sometimes fringe friendships, they drift into this toxic territory, and this can look really subtle. They can be subtle digs, one-sided competition, constant gossip that leaves you feeling like super unsettled. And it's not just emotionally exhausting. It can cause chronic stress from toxic ties, and that literally can impact your body and raise your cortisol, and that's the last thing we want. So the American Psychological Association notes that prolonged exposure to stress raises cortisol, and that turns into a risk of heart disease, diabetes, and autoimmune flare-ups. So if you do have a toxic adult friendship, get out and stay out. So some of the red flags that can come up is that they make you feel smaller after interactions, or they downplay your achievements, or they're just like little digs. Like, if someone says, oh my God, you actually look so good today, that little word actually is a marker for making you feel smaller or less than on a usual basis, right? So they might downplay your achievements, or they expect you to be there, but they rarely show up for you. So you really want someone who's showing up for you time and time again. And you want those people that even if you don't talk for months and months and months, you can go back in and it feels like no time has passed and there is so much love between you two, instead of, having this expectation that you're going to show up for them, but they don't really show up for you. So if you have any of these relationships where you're like, oh my God, this is me. I see the red flags. I have people bringing me down, or, little digs, or downplaying my achievements. Here is what you can do. So it's really important. This word is maybe a little bit overused, but really important. Boundaries. Be selective with your time and energy. Something that my friends and I talk about is like, there is no time for anything. And so that's why I started off by saying I actually sacrificed so many girls' nights, so many girls' dinners, because I felt like I had other responsibilities at home with the kids, with my husband, with work. And I feel like I sacrificed my own health because I didn't get to connect with my girlfriends. So the thing I would say is, if your time is so precious and your energy is so precious, be selective about who you give your time and energy to. If there is someone who doesn't make you feel good, if there is someone who is toxic in your life, you do not have to feel the need to spend time or energy on them or with them. So set those boundaries. It's really important. The second thing that you can do is reframe. Sometimes you don't need to cut someone off, but you need to change the how. Like, it might be coffee instead of a wine night. It could be texting instead of phone calls. It could be group settings instead of a one-on-one. But reframing how you connect with that person might alleviate some of that stress, some of that increased cortisol you feel if you're like in a one-on-one scenario. And again, it's really about listening to your body. And if you do need to cut that person off, then cut that person off. You can release relationships in an elegant way, in a nice way, without being, mean or negative. Because it's not necessarily ghosting. It could be just, less interaction, less time over time, and you can naturally drift versus cutting something off definitively. Because at the end of the day, like, if you run in the same circles, you don't want it to be awkward, but at the same time, you want to protect your peace. And, the last thing I'll say is that if a relationship with a friend feels consistently harmful, step back without guilt and end that relationship because of self-care. So sometimes you just need to reframe, but other times you need to release. And I would just say, evaluate those friendships and see what is best. I had a really awesome friendship with someone in Canada, and I had met them on mat leave, and we started to spend some time together. And over time, families became friends, kids became friends. But there was something that was always like a little bit off, because I felt that person didn't want what was best for me, didn't wish me best. Sometimes there was jealousy at play, and I started to feel less and less comfortable in the relationship. And so over time, I did release the relationship, and I still have so much love in my heart. But for my own sanity and stress level and health, I had to release it because I was no longer comfortable. And that's okay. It's funny because don't you find yourself saying, oh my gosh, that person was my best friend in 9th grade or in middle school. I remember having these beautiful, wonderful relationships, and they had their season. And I think so fondly of my friends from childhood or from university, but we might have just drifted apart. That doesn't mean that it didn't matter, but it was just a friendship that had run its course. So I think that's also really important to recognize. If there is a relationship that you need to release, or if there's something that has run its course, it's okay to let go and not feel bad about it. And then there are the relationships where, again, like many of my friends in Canada, life gets busy and we don't talk for like 6 months. And then we pick up the phone, we make a phone date, and it's like, oh my gosh, all the love just comes pouring back. And, you know, my friends fill my cup and I fill their cup. And it's just this mutual adoration we have for each other. And, you know, you put down the phone and you feel uplifted, you feel happy, you feel all the good feelings. And so those are the relationships that, you know, it's really important to treasure the most. So I would say, who deserves your energy? I love this idea of the circle of 5, like I talked about. My dad always said, if you have the number of true friends as the number of fingers on one hand, consider yourself lucky. And the circle of 5 really comes from research showing that we tend to become the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, emotionally, financially, even physically. So we have to choose pretty wisely when it comes to that, right? So what are some practical steps that you can take to really identify who is in your circle of 5? So write down your top 5. Do they make you laugh? Do they inspire you? Do they support your growth? Are they proud of you? Do they encourage you, or are they someone who like constantly digs at you? You have to find those 5 and really feel that those people are the ones who are really in your circle. So the second thing you can do is prioritize them with small rituals. So one of my best friends in Canada, we were having trouble connecting because life was busy. So we just did a standing Sunday afternoon talk and walk. And so we would both like just get on the phone, walk around our neighborhoods, and just have a great conversation. So whether it's a phone date or a standing coffee date, voice notes or monthly dinners, or even like quarterly days out. Like I have a group of girlfriends from my kids' school, and we try so hard to do these like quarterly little spa dates or dinners. And those are the moments that really lift me up. So, you know, write down those top 5 and then start to prioritize them with these small rituals, and don't spread yourself thin across 50 different acquaintances. So science says that depth matters more than breadth, right? So you don't necessarily need those 50, you just need those 5 and to really have deep connections. So a study from the University of Michigan actually showed that people with just a few close friends had greater cognitive resilience in old age than those with larger but weaker networks. So that's something really, really important. And it kind of shows how important those deep, real connections are. So that's something I really, really encourage. I think it is kind of hard to, you know, make friendships later in life. And it's so beautiful if you've grown up with someone and you maintain that friendship. But also look at stage of life. Like I remember becoming a young mom, and my mom friends, my new mom friends, were literally life for me because they were going through the same thing and we could just relate. If we were up feeding the baby at 3 a.m. or if the baby was crying and teething, we could just text each other. And that connection and having kids kind of grow up together and just relating over something like motherhood is so integral, right? So it's really important to have different groups for different things too. So I have friends that, you know, I love to attend wellness conferences and, you know, go to meditations and go to spas with them. And then I have other friends who I'm like, let's go party and have fun. And that's okay too. Not every relationship needs to be, you know, soulful and deep, but every relationship should be giving you something that is feeding your soul. So I love that about the different friends that I have. Some are just, you know, the ones that I run to when I need to fill my cup with soulful things, and others I run to when I want to just let go and feel free and just dance the night away. And so that is also totally normal. And something that I actually heard on another podcast was, I feel like we put all this pressure to have one best friend in our lives. Like that is my best friend. And that is societal, right? Like when we're kids, oh, that's my best friend. you can't have more than one, but actually you can have best friends for different things. And sometimes one person can't satisfy every part of the need that you have. So it's okay to have many amazing, good, even best friends for different things. So that's something that I think is a really important realization, because I think sometimes we put so much pressure on a relationship that we don't let it kind of flourish in its state because we have these other expectations of what a friendship should be. So before we go on to a little bit of an interactive segment, I'm going to take another quick break. Okay. So I love to play these little games on the podcasts, and I kind of want to play overrated, underrated friendship edition. So, having 500 Instagram followers, is that overrated or underrated? I would love to hear what you think, but I think it's overrated. You know, the number of Instagram followers doesn't equal real closeness. It really doesn't matter how or what your social following is. It really matters what your deep, honest, and true connections are. The next one is canceling plans for self-care, particularly if it's with someone that you think they believe you're a fringe friend or it's a toxic friendship. Canceling plans for self-care is so underrated. Like, how many times have I prayed, please cancel the plans, please cancel the plans. And then I'm dragging my ass to the plans. I don't feel like it because I don't feel comfortable. I feel that anxiety creeping up. I feel depleted afterwards. Honestly, protect your energy and protect your health, right? So if you want to cancel plans for self-care, totally do it. That is cool. One-on-one walks with friends, that is severely underrated. I think movement and laughter and nature is medicine. I don't know how many of you remember Limor Twena, who was on an episode where she talked a little bit about her book, Aggressive Positivity. She and I became close on our one-on-one walks. Like, we were both in Florida during COVID, and we lived relatively close to each other. So we would often meet in the middle and go for walks that would last hours. Like, my husband would call me and he'd be like, "Where are you?" And I'd be like, "I'm walking with Limor and we're having the best time." And honestly, you know, she's one of those people where we might not talk every day. We might not see each other every day. But honestly, I have so much love for her and I truly, deeply connect with her. And I feel like she is absolutely an incredible friend. And when we moved back to Toronto, we actually lived on the same street. So we continued our walks right into this beautiful kind of forest area in our neighborhood. And boy, did that give me life personally. I enjoyed it so, so much. So definitely start a ritual. Go on these one-on-one walks with friends. And the one that I need to get into more, that I think is an important one, but sometimes can be overrated or underrated, is group trips. So if there's a group of people, of girlfriends that you love and you know that you're going to get along with them, it's not going to be like a Real Housewives blow up. It's going to be nurturing for the soul. Then it's underrated. But if you are like going on a group trip with trepidation, then do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Do not go on the trip. So that one is a real depends. It depends on the situation. But if you are aligned, it is amazing and nourishing. And if it's toxic and forced, just don't go. Just know your group and know also what kind of trip you're going for. Is it like a spiritual meditation spa trip? Or is it like a party in South Beach trip, or you know, something in between? Just set the expectations as well and make sure that those expectations are aligned. But all in all, I think it's just really important to connect with your friends, make sure you know who your true friends are and stick to them. And if you feel like you're a fringe friend, then reevaluate those relationships or have open and honest conversations and say, you know what, I'm feeling like I'm really on the side of this. I'm not feeling like I'm a part of this. And sometimes we're afraid to have those conversations. Like, should adults be really talking about friendships? But if you're in a toxic relationship and you want something more out of it, then you have to open up the communication. I have so many women in my life, even my mom, who is in her 60s. She has had such toxic relationships where literally these women are in their 50s and 60s, and they talk to each other like it's high school. They get into fights over silly things like, oh my God, she bought the same purse as me. Like, that is a toxic relationship. So no matter what age, these toxic female relationships exist. Just take them and make sure that you protect your peace if they are toxic, and you protect your nearest and dearest circle of 5. So at the end of the day, this one was a quick one, but here's the bottom line. Female friendships aren't just a nice to have, they're medicine. They lower stress, they protect your heart, and even help you live longer. I love this podcast because I feel like I'm chatting with my girlfriends, and this gives me joy and health. And this week, do a friendship check-in. Deepen one bond that feels like home, and consider releasing one that feels like weight. And if you ever feel like a fringe friend, remember, you're not broken. You're just in the wrong room. Find the people who light you up. And if this episode resonated, share it with a friend, share it with your circle of 5, and share it with someone who truly makes you feel alive. And if you want more tools to building a healthy, joyful life, come connect with me at healthcollective_USA or Nicole Peckerman on Instagram. And thank you so much for listening. I'll see you next time.